Over 300 locations, 9 restaurant chains, every one of them wiped from the Canadian landscape. Mother's Pizza once had 120 outlets. The Zeller's Skillet fed shoppers in more than 80 stores. These were the places that defined eating out in Canada in the 1980s, and each one vanished for a completely different reason. Mr. Green Jeans opened its doors in 1975, tucked inside the Eaton Center, and quickly became a magnet for downtown crowds looking for something a little different. The place was famous for its buffalo chips, a thick golden potato snack that regulars still talk about decades later. Red brick walls, hanging plants, and a playful menu gave the restaurant a sense of fun that set it apart from the bland food courts just steps away. In 2006, a full makeover brought in bright chandeliers and crisp white plates, but the heart of the place stayed the same. One former server remembers you'd see 3 generations at a table: kids, parents, grandparents, everyone sharing a plate of chips. After nearly 40 years, Mr. Green Jeans closed in 2014, not because of fading popularity, but after a lease termination that ended its run as Toronto's most famous one-location wonder. Red Barn's barn-shaped buildings were hard to miss along Ontario highways in the 1970s and early 1980s. At its peak, the chain counted about 30 outlets in the province, each promising a family meal built around rotisserie chicken, the Red Barn special platter, and a help-yourself salad bar. The real draw was the drive-in style service. Families could pull up, order from the car, and have dinner delivered to their window. But as drive-thrus at fast food giants like McDonald's and Wendy's became the new standard, Red Barn's car hop model started to feel outdated. In 1985, the original owners sold the chain to a provincial franchise group, hoping to revive its fortunes. Instead, financial pressures mounted and closures began. The last Red Barn in Canada closed in 1992. Lime Ricky's was hard to forget. If you ever tried the namesake drink, you know why. The menu revolved around that sharp, fizzy lime soda, paired with chicken sandwiches marinated in, you guessed it, lime. By 1984, there were 18 locations scattered across southern Ontario, each one decked out like a retro grill. Regulars still talk about the neon green floats and the almost tart, citrusy kick that cut through the usual burger joint fare. When a Toronto investment firm took over in 1986, they tried to push franchising and expand the menu, but the gamble didn't pay off. Within a year, sales fizzled, and the last Lime Ricky's closed its doors in 1987. For some, the memory lingers: a lime soda, a basket of fries, and the feeling that something quirky and local could vanish almost overnight. Lick's Home Burgers started in 1980 with Denise Meehan flipping patties on Queen Street East, promising a home burger that was fresher and thicker than anything at the big chains. Meehan's approach was simple: fresh Canadian beef, cooked to order, and a menu that made room for a full milkshake bar. By 2012, Lick's had grown to over 30 locations across southern Ontario, each one echoing with the staff's signature sing-song greetings and the sizzle of burgers on the grill. But as gourmet burger bars and fast casual chains flooded the market, Lick's found itself squeezed from both ends. The Zeller's Skillet wasn't just a cafeteria, it was part of the shopping trip itself. Launched in 1976, these in-store lunch counters stretched across more than 80 Zeller's stores by the mid-1980s, serving up poutine, fish and chips, and the famous Zeller's special steak sandwich. The menu was simple, prices were low, and regulars knew you could fill up for just a few dollars while your parents browsed the aisles. For staff, the Skillet was a lifeline during long shifts. One former store manager remembers, if you worked a double, you could count on a hot meal and a quick chat with the kitchen crew, everyone from cashiers to managers lined up for the same plate. But the Skillet's fate was tied to the fortunes of its parent company. When Hudson's Bay Company took over Zeller's in 1998, the skillet began to disappear, with the last cafeteria closing in 1999. The end of Zeller's meant the end of the skillet, leaving shoppers and staff searching for a new midday ritual. Sizzling fajitas and fried ice cream arrived in Canada in the early 1980s when Chi-Chi's, the Minnesota-born Tex-Mex chain, launched its first locations north of the border. At its peak in 1993, Chi-Chi's counted around 25 restaurants across Ontario and Quebec, each one promising a festive escape with sombreros on the walls and plates loaded with burritos, nachos, and chimichangas. The brand's playful approach to Mexican-American food, complete with tableside sizzle and sweet, crunchy desserts, drew families and after-work crowds who wanted something different from the usual burger or steak. But the novelty faded as more authentic and fast casual Mexican options appeared. In 2004, Outback Steakhouse Incorporated acquired the Canadian operations, converting most Chi-Chi's sites to their own brands and closing the rest. One former Canadian manager recalls that people came for the party, but when the party moved on, so did the crowds. Chi-Chi's left behind memories of a brief but colorful era when Tex-Mex dining felt new and just a little bit exotic. A few blocks from the rush of Yonge Street, the Organ Grinder opened in 1979 with a promise: dinner and a show, all under one roof. Guests slipped into red vinyl booths as a full-sized pipe organ thundered overhead, launching into medleys while animatronic chefs marched along the balcony. The spectacle was the main event. Kids craned their necks for the next puppet to pop up, and grown-ups snapped photos as the organist played everything from movie themes to ragtime classics. It wasn't just the music that made the place memorable. Each show ticket, priced at $2.50, covered both the performance and a share of the upkeep for the elaborate machinery. Flyers from the era boasted Toronto's one and only organ-powered pizza party, and for a while the buzz filled every seat. But keeping the magic alive came at a cost. Maintenance bills climbed every year: $1,200 for animatronic repairs, another $500 for pipe replacements, plus weekly wages for the performers. By the late 1980s, the novelty had faded and the numbers no longer added up. The last curtain fell in 1991, when the Esplanade location closed for good, leaving behind only the echo of its final chord. As one former performer put it, "We didn't just serve pizza, we made memories you could hear." Ponderosa Steakhouse arrived in Canada in 1972, promising families a full meal and a little bit of adventure for one price. The big draw was the all-you-can-eat salad bar, a buffet loaded with iceberg lettuce, grated cheese, and every kind of crouton you could imagine. By the mid-1980s, Ponderosa operated 45 locations, mostly in Ontario and the Prairies, and became a familiar stop for birthday dinners and Sunday lunches. One former franchisee recalls this memory: you could feed a family of 4, let the kids pile their own plates, and still have change for dessert. In 1995, the chain tried something new. It launched a scaled-down Ponderosa skillet format in shopping malls, hoping to capture the quick lunch crowd. But the economics of unlimited buffets began to falter as food costs rose, and diners grew wary of communal salad bars. The 1990s saw a steady retreat, with locations closing each year. By March 2008, the last Canadian Ponderosa shut its doors, ending a run that had once seemed unstoppable. The empty buffet stands left behind a lesson about the risks and rewards of feeding a crowd, and the challenge of keeping a once innovative idea fresh. Gray Sisson, Ken Fowler, and Pasquale Mara opened the first Mother's Pizza Parlor in Hamilton in 1970. Their goal was simple: create a place where families could share a classic thin-crust pizza or a big plate of spaghetti in a dining room that felt like home. By the early 1980s, Mother's had become a fixture in towns across Ontario and beyond, with nearly 120 outlets at its peak. The red checkered tablecloths, secret tomato sauce, and the signature Mother's Original Pizza drew loyal crowds, while the menu's spaghetti and meatballs turned weeknight dinners into something special. When the chain sold for $9.8 million in the early 1990s, it seemed unstoppable. But the new owners struggled to keep up with changing tastes and rising costs. Locations closed one by one, and the Hamilton flagship, where it all began, served its last slice in 1992. For years, the Mother's name lived on only in memory, until a small team brought it back in 2013. The revival opened in Hamilton, then spread to Kitchener and Brantford, drawing crowds of former regulars who wanted one more taste of the past. Even so, the final revival location closed in 2018, ending the story for good. One founder once said, "You could walk in and see 3 generations at the table. Everyone felt welcome." For many, the loss of Mother's isn't just about pizza. It's about a place that felt like family, and the comfort of a familiar meal that's now gone forever. Today, local chains vanish faster than ever. In just one recent year, over 1,000 Canadian restaurants closed. As our dining choices narrow, so does our collective memory. The places we gather shape who we are. What survives tomorrow depends on what we value now. Share your memories below.